Serge Dorny, first of all, congratulations to the award Opernhaus des Jahres, which is based on a poll conducted amongst 50 critics from all over Europe and the United States. It is the first time that this award goes to an opera company in France. What does this award mean to you and to Opéra de Lyon?
First of all, thank you. For this award and for being given this award. Of course, we are extremely proud. Of being the recipients of this award, because it gives somehow for us it is a sign of recognition of the work we have been trying to achieve ever since 2003, and even before. I'm sure the work, the long-term work, the consistency and on the artistic excellence that we are trying to achieve every time again, and this is never guaranteed, and also the kind of the positioning of the Lyon Opera House within the community and within society, I'd say, making it a real resource and making it a real partner and a good citizen in the city, and trying to participate in the articulation of what society, the society of tomorrow, is to be. So I think this international recognition is something extremely important, and it gives also a kind of European dimension to arts. The very fact that for the first time it's a French house, therefore outside the German territories, is important. There's a demonstration. Of course, that still some forms have a real and true European dimension in the moral sense of the word, and I think we are extremely. I think the Opera House is extremely proud, and we will try to be. We'll continue to try to. We want to continue, obviously, to deserve to have been recipients of this award.
One of the striking features in Lyon at Opéra de Lyon is the young audience. How did you achieve to get young people so much interested in a wide range of productions?
Well, I think it is to do, first of all, with trying to make the opera house, I would say, a piazza. Today's society is characterized by lots of communication, actually, but with very little dialogue. We speak a lot, we communicate a lot, social networks and so on and so forth, but real places to meet each other and to dialogue and to live, enjoy and common emotions, well, those places are really missing enormously in today's society. The second thing is that I think we are working, Lyon Opera House, I can speak for my opera house, we are working with 80% of public resources, of public funds, and therefore this gives us absolutely the obligation as to make opera available to a wide range of audiences, not only the aficionados, but actually the wide range of audience. And therefore, for us, it's key, I think, to be going outside, to try to reach out of the confines of opera, of our building. Trying to be present in the whole community in a variety of forms. Through education work, to community work, to helping vereins, associations, and to try to be a catalyst, I would say, of a variety of things, to inspire, to accompany, to allow, to make things possible, and all based on the resources that the Opéra de Lyon and our opera company has available. And of course, it's not something you achieve overnight. It's a question of trust, of establishing a kind of developing trust in between a community, audiences, and this opera organization. I mean, it's clear that operas are still stigmatized as being reserved for the happy few. You have to be eligible to be able to access an opera, to enjoy opera. You almost need to have be screened before getting into an opera house. I mean, as when to applaud and how to be dressed. I mean, it's quite an intimidating experience, and we wanted actually indeed to make it less intimidating and saying, well, this is a house open to all of the people. And we have been trying to, therefore, to communicate in a variety of ways with the communities that are living and animating the city. And I think this is gradually, and I have to say gradually, this has allowed us, of course, to have a real extraordinary mix of audience in this house. I mean, the figures speak for themselves. I mean, 25% is younger than 26 years old. 52% of our audience is younger than 45 years old. The part of subscribers is important, but it's only 23%. All the rest is single ticket buyers. We have today, I mean, the attendance is superior to 95%. So it is a demonstration that today we have lots of different audiences that have taken, ownership somehow, in some way, I mean, on the opera, and therefore they will be probably my best ambassadors. I mean, claiming what the opera brings to society, and I think in terms of communicating with my funders, this is a far better way to communicate with my funders than actually me requesting more money for always the same audience. I think it's important this, at the same time, what is important is this is not detrimental to the quality of the productions. We are not interested in populism. We are not interested in being populist or popular. If you look at the artistic program we have been trying to achieve with the orchestra, with the chorus, with the conductor, with the directors involved, we have been very challenging. I mean, and so I think the accessibility and artistic excellence are undissociable. I mean, for me, they go hand in hand, and it is also this extraordinary mix of audience that has allowed us to touch on a much wider artistic, on very diverse artistic projects and on a very diverse artistic community. If you look, I mean, artists involved in the project like Romeo Castellucci, like David Marton, just to name a few. I mean, Wajdi Mouawad, are demonstrative, of course, of what we have been trying to achieve and what we are trying to achieve on a day-to-day basis, and which never ends.
The programming of opera is probably one of the most international activities that you can imagine in the world of the arts. At the same time, opera is and should be based in the local community it serves. How would you define the goût lyonnais of Opéra de Lyon when it comes to defining the artistic identity of the company?
Well, the thing is, I think that what is important is, and I'm really a strong defender of that, I think every arts organization should have its own identity. There should be, although we live in a global world, although we live I think art should not be transferable. I mean, it should not be, I think Lyon Opera House, Paris, or being Stuttgart, being at Frankfurt, Munich, being Scala, whatever, should have an own identity. And this identity obviously should take into consideration, the history of a company, the resources of the company, a variety of elements, and it is absolutely, every company should have its particularity, that's important. It should not be, if you take off the front page, the cover page of a program, you should still be able to say, oh, that is probably the DNA of this opera company. That's important for. So in terms of, obviously, therefore, what we have done in Lyon is obviously different from what happens and what should happen. I mean, in any other city or any company. First of all, I mean, we are the only opera company in the region. I mean, so the kind is we are serving a region of, let's say, of 6-7 million people. I mean, I look at the region Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. You know, this is basically where our audiences are coming from. So we have a kind of monopoly on this. That's first of all. It's important.
Which makes things easier than in other places.
That's not and that's important. So therefore, that specific has to be taken into consideration when developing a project. Secondly, now the house has a certain size. You know, the pit is a smallish pit, and we have an orchestra of 62. We have a chorus of 34. So you have to not to regret what you don't have, but actually to capitalize on what you have. And I would say in terms of Lyon, what I've always been interested in also is, of course, the repertoire. The standard repertoire will always be something that has to be the basis of an opera house. But it is important, obviously, to not to confine the repertoire and to this kind of ever reducing number of operas that are being performed over and over and over again. It's important, I mean, obviously, to demonstrate that the future of opera doesn't lay into reducing the number of operas. I mean, since Monteverdi as an Orfeo until today, we imagine that something like 50,000, 60,000 operas have been written. I mean, if you look at what is performed today on the international platforms, well, it's probably reduced to some 80 titles that are being over and over and over produced. I think it's important, of course, for us, first of all, in Lyon, to widen and to try to introduce repertoire that I think is very interesting, that is interesting in the perspective of a season program, where we are trying to obviously tell a story, tell a dramaturgy, you know, and therefore give resonance from one work to another, how they fit together. I mean, telling a story about today, although we are taking work from the past, how this work from the past actually still tells something about us. Secondly, I would think also it's important that we are challenging the form, and therefore trying to push the boundaries, and maybe inviting hybrid forms into a kind of standard repertoire. I mean, if we are doing
which means creations that are cooperations between Schauspiel, for instance, on the one hand, and music theatre on the other.
Film, theatre, music. I mean, like I would think something like Medea. I mean, if you look at Medea, well, see how or Oedipus, you know, how you can indeed compile a kind of new form, and that is picking from opera, from theatre, from film, Pasolini for Medea, for example. Now, how you can, and I think that the third thing is to continue to inspire new work. I mean, it's important if art and opera has a future, obviously it is dependent also on our capacity and our willingness actually to continue to contribute to the repertoire of tomorrow and to continue to enrich this repertoire. I mean, I think the legitimacy of us performing Mozart or Beethoven or Strauss or Wagner, well, is actually given if we contribute in the same way to the kind of fundus of opera of tomorrow. So if it's a lively art form, then, you know, new opera, new pieces have to be introduced, and it's interesting. Some of these pieces, I mean, that Lyon, the opera Lyon has inspired to, have almost become repertoire. I'm thinking of of the Peter Utfus, the Three Sisters, the Chekhov production now, which is almost repertoire. Death of Klinghoffer, John Adams. I mean, there are, and some of these topics also can relate to debates that are existing in today's communities. We commissioned a couple of years ago an opera on death penalty to the Minister of Justice, ex-Minister of Justice, Robert Badinter, opera written by Thierry Esquèche called Claude. Well, it's interesting. I mean, death penalty, was abolished in France. I mean, was the last country actually in Europe to abolish the death penalty. And yet one thinks today this question is resolved. Well, actually it's not resolved. It's I think if there were to be a referendum today on death penalty, I'm not sure about the outcome. Yeah. So it's a real, I think opera also has to contribute to some debates, not in the sense that we guide or we want to determine an answer, but just we want to nurture or feed reflection, thinking, help, invite people to think about some topics without providing an answer, a definitive answer, because there's no definitive answer to anything. But it's important that that these places where that have some depth, have some opportunities, forums for discussion, for debate, for encounters, that those forums continue to exist. They are critical and essential in today's society. We are more solitarian than ever before, and yet actually, as I said, we have all these media available, Twitter and social media available, and yet we are extremely solitarian. So I think
in a stream of white noise.
Absolutely, and therefore silence is extremely important. And music also allows, therefore, silence to exist.
But at the same time, you have to convince your supporters and the audience and to inspire them to support this type of work, which is also an advantageous and adventurous type of work. We are sitting here above the rooftops of Lyon, and just across the street, you're looking at the mairie, where the head of the city has his offices. What about the support from the municipal and the state part of the country?
Well, it has been, I have to say, the Opera de Lyon has benefited from extraordinary support. I mean, from the city of Lyon, from, of course, the national government, Ministry of Culture, also from the regional government, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and from the metropole Lyon. We are benefiting from strong support, financial support, but also from, I would say, moral support. I mean, in what we are doing. They have obviously this outreach activity that we have started in 2003, and also how the organization, the institution has developed, has been extremely well supported, and even in periods where maybe when we were starting, I mean when I was starting in 2003, 2004, this was requiring quite some courage from politicians, I mean, to help that, because change means, I mean, undoing certain things and trying another way. That needs courage. That needs, I mean, political support, and that support has been there. I mean, and I am and all my colleagues, we are very grateful actually for this tremendous support we have benefited from, and we continue to benefit from.
Has there been friction as well? I give you one example. When you started out, actually when this wonderful building designed by Jean Nouvel reopened in 1993, short time after that, a lot of break dancers and rap artists showed up in front of the Opera House, because the arcades are a perfect territory and perfect ground for them to practice. Many people were probably irritated to have that site in front of the Opera House. How did you go about it, and did you have support to invite these people to become part of the artistic programs of the Opera House right away?
Well, the thing is that, obviously the building is dated from 1993, so this is before my arrival. First of all, the building is already a kind of signature building. I mean, a very identifiable building, like some opera house, like Sydney, for example. It's unique in its architecture.
It's very dark, very black.
But it's one can't switch it with any other opera house in the world.
That's
so
true.
It has a unique signature. So, but also it means that if you come into the opera, the building is questioning already the content. It means that what one imagines an opera was, and when you see the result of Jean Nouvel, obviously you can immediately understand that you cannot repeat. I mean, same content as what opera once was. That it is a building that is questioning, obviously, the genre opera, and obviously an opera in itself. So, which is fantastic. The thing is that before '93, under the arcades you're referring to, there was all kinds of activities. When I look at photos, this is before my time. There was a shopping mall. So there were this was I would say
like in Vienna State Opera.
Almost like La Halle Bocuse, almost you could say.
Yeah.
Except they were not selling food, they were selling stockings and all kinds of newspapers and so on. So there was an activity there. This activity, obviously, by the new building took out all of that activity, and another activity came, which indeed, street dancers, street art, invaded this space. And maybe in the beginning, obviously, there is a kind of conflict in between a population that one is not used to have, or that is almost, the opposite of this temple ritual, and of the ritual of the temple that is inside the building. And I thought as a kind of opportunity to open, and to start a dialogue with the community, because those people are people that are living in the community, that are part of the community today. When you walk around in Lyon, you will see people, very different cultures, different interests, and I wanted absolutely to create new accesses to the Opéra de Lyon, and making the Opéra de Lyon a destination. Let's meet at the opera. So this street art and breakdancers that were there, for me, were an opportunity. I wanted to know what they were doing. I didn't know anything about this art. I had never seen a hip hop or whatever. I didn't know what it meant. What they were doing. So it obliged me almost to understand and to start a communication. And I would say almost this was probably the first communication and the first access I had to understand the community, and to start a communication with the communities, and we always expanded it. It started with the hip hoppers, and we went to obviously areas that were in great distress and difficulty. We went to all kinds of places, but actually it started with this hip hoppers, and it somehow made us internally, all of my colleagues, orchestra, technicians, dancers, chorus, administration, think about what are we doing, why are we doing, and for who are we doing? What opera and ballet, because it is also a ballet company, and so it obliges us every day to give sense to the action we are standing for, and I think this is important. It's to some extent, it helps our consciousness. Every day to try to answer the question, probably with a different answer. There's not one answer, and the answer of today is probably not the appropriate answer of tomorrow. And I think this is what opera should be, somehow not having nostalgia of the past, but having a real nostalgia of the future.
At the same time, you programmed a festival recently in March, at the center of which were reconstructions of three iconic opera productions. But this has nothing to do with nostalgia of going back to the good old times?
No, it's not. It's. I think that sometimes, to look back helps us also to move forward. The idea. This was an unique and one-off, experience we did. I mean, in the sense that I thought it is important. Obviously, if you look at lots of productions that we are seeing today, or obviously, own something to a movement that started, I would say in the 60s, and between the 60s and the 80s, this Regie Theater. And there are some godfathers and godmothers, I would say, of this Regie Theater, of course. And we have tried to bring together some of the kind of artists that are icons in this movement. I mean, Ruud Berghaus, Heine Müller. I mean, Heine Müller as a dramaturg himself, first of all, as an author, but also then as obviously with Ruud Berghaus as a kind of animator of the Berliner ensemble. I mean, and of course then this entire school that was started in Berlin around Peter Stein, Luc Bondy, Klaus Michael Gruber, and Schaubühne. Well, those, I mean, this movement has invaded, I mean, a lot of territories and cultures. I mean, outside, far outside Germany. And I thought it was important just to look, of course, as if some of those productions of those artists are emblematic or referential and continue to live in our memory. And if we revisit or if we see a certain work, we keep in mind that memory of this referential production. I mean, I will name a few others. I mean, if I see Così fan tutte, I will never forget the Luc Bondy, Così fan tutte, and if I see Lucio Silla, I'm thinking of Patrice Chéreau, an extraordinary Lucio Silla. So actually the way I look at his productions is through the prism of something that has been kept in my memory. And for me it was interesting to have this opportunity to bring back these referential productions and see with the prism of time what the meaning of this production still is for today. So almost making an état des lieux, a state of play. Where are we at? Therefore, how do we move forward? So, but it's nothing to do with the very fact that I think that opera should be constantly
act as a museum.
Act as a museum, But is it important in a museum to have referential works, in order to understand, obviously, the evolution, and to be able, obviously, to also to stimulate the evolution. So I think the memory, it's like in speeches. I read sometimes landmark speeches. I mean,
right.
Be it, and it's
obviously there is nothing wrong with museums. They're sources of knowledge, and this
absolutely.
Knowledge is absolutely needed to shape the future. Last question: what are your visions for Opéra de Lyon in the future? Is there anything you haven't achieved yet, or that you're dreaming about to do in the near or mid-range future?
Well, I mean, obviously many dreams, and I hope the dreams will continue. I mean, and I do not want to reveal my dreams. Because I want to keep them obviously for the Opéra de Lyon. That's where I am, and therefore my loyalty has to be to the Opéra de Lyon. But there's many. I think it's just to continue to stimulate and to question. I mean, what we're doing, why we are doing it, and whom we are doing it for. I mean, this kind of so this endeavor is never ending endeavor, and therefore to challenge the form, to continue to explore new repertoire, I mean to continue to inspire new work, I mean to continue to obviously identifying new artists and people that are not necessarily acquainted with the form of opera, I mean coming from other perspectives. So I hope this kind of tranquility, you know, and continuous search, you know, will continue to be the Ariadne thread actually, and that will characterize, I mean, or continue to characterize Opera de Lyon.
Thank you very much, and I hope you will find time to celebrate with your team and all the people who make the success at Opera de Lyon possible, day by day.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
For this, for the award, for the trust that it expresses, and we will continue to work hard to deserve this award. Thank you.
Thank you.